Introduction for histological technique. This laboratory is second practical laboratory for the histology. Preparation of tissue section histological technique. What is the meaning of the preparation of tissue section? By what? By preparing the slide. The method called histological technique or called the paraffin technique, which is the most common method in preparing the tissue section or preparing the slide. There are main steps for the paraffin technique or the tissue section or the histological technique. The main steps begin by the fixation, dehydration, clearing, infiltration, embedding, suctioning or cutting, staining, and mounting. This 7 steps is very, very important for the preparing of what? Of the tissue section. Beginning with the fixation. This figure shows to taking the sample from animal or from human. Number 1, removing the organ sample, the sample, a piece of the meat from any part of the animal, and then cutting into the small piece by taking a small piece, not large piece, because the large, the amount of the chemical material is not enough for what we should take the small piece of the meat or for all the sample, cutting by scalpel into small piece. Preparing specimen for suctioning. For the suctioning, beginning with the dehydration and clearing, embedding, mold with the specimen in the molded paraffin block, remove from the mold, and then trimming by cutting or trimming of the slide. Another, the suctioning, this microtome, by taking the this block specimen inside into the microtome. Another steps, straightening suction or water bath and drying on warmer. Another, staining, which is the very important steps. Why the staining is very important? Because most of the cells in the body is colorless. We should staining and other cover slips to preserve the tissue by this slide and this cover. This final steps we obtain the glasses slide. Inside the slide is tissue covered by the cover slip. The sampling is very important steps to take from the animal or from the slaughterhouse. This slaughterhouse taking any sample for the research, for the laboratory, or for the hospital. Sampling is cathetering of matter from body, and so the sample obtained from the laboratory animal, rat, mouse, rabbit, guinea pig, or from the slaughterhouse, or from the zoo. This type of the animal, in which animal we take the sample. This is called the sampling by taking the sample from the animal. The main steps of the fixation. The main steps is the fixation, which is the process by which the component of the cell and the tissue are fixed in the chemical or partially physically. Or the fixation is very, very important method to preserve the tissue sample 0.5 to 1 centimeter in thickness in the fixative agent. The example for the fixative agent is common, but the most common type 10% formalin or formal saline. So the most common is neutral buffer formalin, which is safe for all type of the tissue. The main function of the fixation or preservation of the tissue, or the objective of the fixation, means the function. What is the meaning of the function of the fixative? because the fixation is very important. Prevent what? Prevent the autolysis. Autolysis by what? By hydrolytic enzyme of the lysosome inside the body. Prevent what? Autolysis. And also the fixation prevent putrefaction by what? By the bacteria of the cells inside the cell and in the tissue. Another function, fix the cell and tissue without change in the volume and shape. This the main function of the fixative. Also have another function by the preservation of the chemical compound and microanatomic constituent. So the histochemistry is possible in these cases. Another function, hardening of the tissue. The fixative act as the hardening of the tissue. So the hardening effect of the fixative allow easy for what? For the manipulation, handling, manipulation of what? Some tissue in the body is soft. For example, the fixation is very important to hardening or easy of the manipulations of the soft tissue, for example, brain and intestine. This type of the tissue is soft. So the fixative act as the hardening of the tissue. This the main function of the fixation, which is very, very important steps in the histological technique. If this step is not done to the tissue, the sample is autolysis and is putrefaction and destruction of the sample. For this, the fixation must be done to the tissue. The labeling of the sample. This sample inside the cassette or inside the container must label this label. With tissue specimen must be labeled case number to avoid what? Any confusion, to take the right or correct name. The label includes the following details that should be recorded in a register: type of the tissue, for example, this kidney, brain, intestine, gland, eye, any part should be labeled which type of the tissue, species of the animal, cat, rat, dog, sheep, cow, and also the age of the animal is important, and gender, male or female. Also, we recorded the type of the fixative because some organ in the body, for example, the testes take a special type of the fixative, for example, bound solution. Another neutral buffer formalin is common for all type, but certain organ in the body need the special type of the fixative. Also, the data is very, very important. This about the labeling of the tissue. This label done in this area, this tissue, this also the tissue. And when we take the sample must be cut into the small pieces to penetrate the chemical inside the tissue or fixative. After fixation, the dehydration steps begin, which is very, very important steps. Why? To remove water from the tissue, remove water from the tissue specimen by using ascending gradient of ethyl alcohol. The example of the agent, of the dehydrating agent, ethyl alcohol. There are several types of the dehydrating agent, but most common ethyl alcohol. This grade, ascending grade, 70% begin with the 70, 80, 90, and 100 of the percent respectively. This must be done respectively by the ascending grade of the ethyl alcohol, which is very, very important, these steps. Why? To remove the water from the tissue. The water is remaining, the water from the fixative. So this water must be removed from the tissue by using which agent? Ethyl alcohol. Because in the fixative agent, for example, formalin, there is water. This water must be removed from the tissue by using special steps called the dehydration, by using the agent ethyl alcohol. This ethyl alcohol remove all the water from the tissue. Another steps, clearing. by a replacement of the alcohol from the tissue specimen by what? By using clearing agent, for example, xylene. Also, there is another type, for example, benzene and acetone, but the most common agent used in these steps, xylene. The importance or the aims of this steps clearing by replacement of alcohol from the tissue by what? By xylene. Because the alcohol not replaced with the paraffin, but the xylene is replaced with the paraffin. Infiltration. Infiltration means immersion of the tissue specimen within the molten paraffin wax. Molten paraffin wax. The melting point of this wax is range from 45 C to 60 centigrade. From 45 Celsius to what? To 60 Celsius. This is very important for the wax to select from the any shop. Must be this number must be done inside the area. The clearing agent is replacement by what? By paraffin. Why we done this infiltration, this steps to replacement of what? Of a clearing agent by paraffin. If the clearing steps is not done, the paraffin wax is not replaced by the alcohol or by the dehydrating agent. For this, the clearing is very important. This figure shows the paraffin wax and the melting point must be this number. And also this used to preserve or putting the sample in this area. The dehydration, clearing, and impregnation may form it manually by hand or by automatic tissue machine. This automatic tissue machine, this handling, and manually. This automatic, there is special system or machine to handling the tissue automatically from 1 hour, 2 hour, or 2 change, 3 change will done automatically. This steps, number 1 steps, fixation. This taking the sample and cut into the small piece, then put in the fixative agent, this neutral buffer formalin. This fixation first steps is very, very important to prevent putrefaction, autolysis, and preserve the tissue. After fixation, there is dehydration, taking the ascending steps, 80, 90, 10, 100 of the ethyl alcohol to remove the water from the tissue sample. The water is remaining of the fixation. After that, the clearing begins by using the xylene to remove the water, this water from the tissue, to replacement by the paraffin wax. After that, there is infiltration. Take the sample inside the container, full with the paraffin wax, this degree by infiltration. After this method, there is embedding. There is embedding of the tissue to make the block, hardening to easy for handling of the ore, to put and connect with the microtome, this embedding area. This figure show or explain the steps of the embedding of the tissue specimen, which is embedding in the paraffin wax within the mold. This paraffin wax, this tissue inside it. After solidify, the paraffin block hardening. The main function of this is to harden the tissue, and when it cold does, it gives sample external support during what? Suctioning on the microtome. The main function of this steps or the embedding, harden the tissue and giving external support or giving covering, this cover, external support to be handling or connect with the microtome during the suctioning of the specimen by what? By microtome, this microtome. Sectioning or cutting. This tool called the microtome. This specimen inside the block, paraffin block containing tissue is cut by what? By plate of microtome to obtain a ribbon or a slide or section, thin section. This thin section obtained by cutting by hand cutting, obtain this thin slide. 3 to 5 micrometer in thickness, must be 5 micrometer in the thickness. Cut the degree of the plate or cutting. Finally, you obtain this figure. This 5 micrometer in thickness must be check this point, 5 micrometer in thickness. Finally, we obtain this thin section or this slide. After that, the ribbon is floating. This ribbon, this is the ribbon or thin slide or section obtained by after cutting. The ribbon is floating on what? On the surface of the water bath. This water bath in the why? To remove the all folding. To remove the folding from the tissue. This water bath. After that, using slide to pick the section out of the water bath and place the slide on warm plate to dry. This warm plate to dry, this warm. After that, to dry the slide from the water, to evaporate the or to dry the slide. Another step which is very, very important, staining. Several dyes are used to stain the tissue section and make them visible with the microscope. Why the process staining is done for the tissue? Because most of the cells in the body is colorless, have no color. For this, this process staining is very important to done to the tissue to make visible by the light microscope. There are two types of the stain. There is routine stain and special stain. Routine stain, hematoxylin and eosin. When we say routine, hematoxylin and eosin. When we say special, there is different type of the stain. This routine stain, hematoxylin and eosin. Hematoxylin, purple in color. The hematoxylin is a natural dye which extracted from the wood. From the wood, it is the natural dye, while the eosin is synthetic. This naturally, this from the nature, from what? From the wood, and this synthetic. Eosin is pink to red color. Characteristic and reaction of the hematoxylin and the eosin. The hematoxylin classification as basic dyes or basic stain, while eosin classified as what? As acid stain. What is the organelles in the body stained with the hematoxylin, and what is the organelles in the body stained with the eosin? This step is very, very, very important in the practical histology for all year. Hematoxylin, purple color, basic stain, basophilic stain, react with what? With the nucleus. With the nucleus, DNA, nucleolus, and RNA nucleus ribosome. Why? Because we have reaction in this point. Basic stain reacted with what? With the acid, DNA acid. The basic stain reacted with the acid component of the cell. The acidic component of the cell is nucleolus. Either the nucleus stained with what? With the hematoxylin, purple in color. The nucleus take purple color. Why? Because the nucleus have acidic component. The acidic component react with the basic dyes or basic stain. Eosin, the color pink to red color. Eosin characterized by acid stain or acidophilic. This stain reacted with the basic component of the cell, for example, the cytoplasmic protein. The acid stain reacted with the basic component of the cell, for example, the cytoplasmic protein and extracellular structure. Type of the special stain which used to demonstrate particular feature in the body, we use the special stain. Osmic acid stain the fat cell or lipid droplet, the color is the black color. Periodic acid shape, PAS or PAS, stain the carbohydrate in the body, the color is violet to red color. Alcian blue stain, carbohydrate or it is blue color. Another stain, you have silver impregnation. This type of the stain stain the reticular fiber, reticular tissue, and nervous tissue, which become black in color. We have another stain, Mason trichrome stain. This stain used to differentiate between the connective tissue fiber and muscle. The color is blue or green, and the muscle is red. The connective tissue fiber stain green or blue, while the muscle by Mason trichrome stain red. This figure shows the under the light microscope special type. This lipid droplet stained with the silver with the osmic acid lipid droplet. This lipid droplet with osmic acid special stain. This section taken from the duodenum, part of the small intestine. The mucus secreting goblet cell react with the PAS, carbohydrate, PAS. And this part of the cervix, part of the uterus in the female. The epithelial cell lining the cervix react with either Alcian blue or PAS, which illustrated the chemical differences in the type of the mucus secreted cell. This Alcian blue, special stain. You have another type of the stain. This sample take from the adrenal gland or suprarenal gland. This gland situated above the kidney in the horse. The reticular fiber form the network capsule and delicate supporting framework adrenal secretory cell. This method is for the reticular fiber. Black in color, there is silver impregnation. Reticular fiber. This figure shows the satellite cell in the cerebrum, in the brain. This method is used specifically to illustrate the cytoplasmic process of the neuron of the central nervous system. Silver impregnation, black in color. This also black in color, special stain, silver impregnation. This cytoplasmic process of the neurons in the cerebrum of the nervous tissue. Another figure, tongue. The muscle is stained red, the red and the connective tissue fiber green, this type of the Mason trichrome stain. We have two colors, red muscle and green collagen fiber. Another figure, kidney. This kidney tubule. Mason trichrome stain, the connective tissue is stained the blue. The connective tissue is the blue in this figure, while the connective tissue is the green. This type of the Mason, all type or the special type of the stain. The staining may be performed manually or by using automatic tissue machine. Manually steps for the staining, all the steps of the staining from steps number 1, alcohol, and then after that from this steps, or the automatically by this machine. Mounting or covering step is very, very important steps to preserve the slide for long time. Place the cover step over the staining tissue section by what? By using mounting media or DPX, or sometimes there's Canada balsam, another type of the, such as DPX. Put one drop, this slide, glass slide tissue, put one drop of the dpx, and then another slide put in the angle this area to remove air bubble from this, and finally cover slip in the tissue to preserve, or this called the mounting or covering step. We have video to explain the main steps of the histological technique or the paraffin tissue section or paraffin technique. We have video, simple video explain the steps, any steps and type of the 7 type of the tissue technique, beginning from the fixation, dehydration, clearing.
Fixation, dehydration, clearing, infiltration, embedding, section cutting, staining, finally mount the tissue. Fixation. It is not a part of processing of tissue because the step is already done by surgeon when he remove a piece of tissue. But to understand, I have to discuss. Now, fixative is a chemical substance used to preserve the tissue in their original form without degradation. Basically, it prevents tissue from autolysis and putrefaction, which already discussed. Commonly used fixative is formaldehyde, which is very irritating to eyes and skin. Volume of fixative is 20 times greater than the size of tissue or organ. One interesting point is that 37% of formaldehyde is in original form, while it is taken as 100% for making solution. Another one is dehydration. D means remove, hydration means water. To remove of water from tissue is known as dehydration. We have to remove water because it is not miscible with the paraffin wax, which is our further step. For dehydration, we take step by step from lower grade alcohol to higher grade, 30% alcohol, 50% alcohol, 70%, 90% and absolute alcohol. Some other dehydrating agents such as acetone, dioxane, etc. We have to pass the tissue in grade of alcohol step by step, otherwise sudden change in environment cause destruction of tissue. Dioxane has very unique property. It is miscible with both water and paraffin wax, so no need of next step clearing. But it is very carcinogenic and costly, that's why we does not use it. Clearing. Except from dioxane, other dehydrating agent not mixable with the paraffin wax, so we have to remove the above dehydrating agent with the help of following clearing agents such as xylene, toluene, chloroform, benzene, cedarwood oil, etc. Commonly we use xylene, toluene, chloroform and benzene is carcinogenic in nature. Cedarwood oil is very costly. So in a lab we give 3 changes of xylene, 1 hour for each, but it may be different in lab to lab. The clearing help to make transparent the tissue and it increase the refractive index so that easily visible under microscope. Infiltration. After clearing, the tissue is kept in jar of molten paraffin wax so that wax are infiltrate or enter into the biopsy or autopsy. It provides internal strength to the tissue. 56-degree temperature is for melting point of paraffin wax. It may be changed according to the quality of wax, but not more than plus or minus 2. Embedding. It is a process in which tissue is surrounded by a solid medium such as with the help of paraffin wax, carbo wax, etc. It provides external support to tissue to fix in microtome. It provides hardness for proper section cutting. We can use some other embedding medium such as carbo wax, paraplast, celluloidine. Mainly for large tissue we use celluloidine. Most of the laboratory use paraffin wax because it is cheap. Previously for embedding we are using plasticized trays, L mold, but nowadays we are using plastic embedding cassette. Now finally tissue with embedding medium called block. It is ready for section cutting. Another is section cutting. We adjust the block to microtome, which is a machine for cutting section of tissue. Commonly used microtome is rotary microtome. We have another microtome such as rocking, sliding, freezing, etc. 3 to 5 micrometer section cut for the examination of tissue. Now put this section into water bath whose temperature is less than the melting temperature of paraffin wax. Otherwise, wax is melt inside the water bath. This is done to remove the crease in section. Now with the help of slide, we take floating tissue in slide. This slide is coated with the Mayer egg albumin, which makes section to adhere on slide. The section of tissue having paraffin around themselves so slightly warm the slide so that only tissue stick to the slide while the paraffin wax get melted. This is called deparaffinization, removing of paraffin. Now finally dip the slide in a xylene jar because paraffin is mixable or dissolved in xylene, so it completely removes paraffin from the slide. In previous step, if you remind, water is removed, but our stain is aqueous in nature, it required water for staining tissue. So now we hydrate the tissue. This step is called as hydration. Remember, it is not dehydration, it is hydration, which means we give higher to lower grade of alcohol and finally to distilled water. 90% alcohol, 70% alcohol, 50%, 30% and distilled water to make dehydrate to hydrate. After hydration, stain the section. Commonly used stain is HND, hematoxylin and eosin stain. We can also use some special stains such as PAS, Orsin, Retic, etc. Again dehydrate it to preserve the slide of tissue. For dehydration, we use lower grade to higher grade of alcohol, 30% alcohol, 50%, 70%, 90% and higher grade is absolute alcohol. Now clear with xylene again and finally mount with DPX with the help of cover slip. Distrine plasterized xylene. Mounting is preserve the section of tissue for longer storage time and prevent damaging of tissue. So this is all about the introduction about the histopathology. Now the question is that what is the role of fixative in histopathology?